The infrastructure for the land recently changed in China. Here you can see the different evolution of the fast-speed railway in Germany, in Japan, France, and China. So China now is the top of the world. And this one is actually, the data is from 2008. It has reached up to 350 kilometers per hour. But recently, it has reached up to 500 kilometers per hour, which is very close to the flight. And that actually makes China very ambitious to change the whole geopolitical location in China and also around China. So according to the 12 five-year plan, by 2012, there are already 36 high-speed railway lines for passengers. Passenger traffic transport. And by 2012, the constructed high-speed railway is going to reach up to 13,000 kilometers. And actually, this also changed the geopolitical location, changed the competition of the maritime Silk Road to the continental Silk Road, in which in the future, if you take a high-speed railway, if it is constructed from London to Beijing, you can reach Beijing in 48 hours, so which is very competitive. And that is why all the old Silk Road, including the Central Asia countries, are so interested in the high-speed railway development and the collaboration with China. Here is the Kazakhstan President Nazarbayev visiting China's high-speed railway in Beijing. Another competitiveness is quite similar between Russia and China. Russia is now the third biggest country in the foreign currency reserve, and China is the first, Japan is the second. And 2 months ago, China has reached up a record, has reached up a $3 trillion US dollars reserve. And the president of the central bank said that it is totally exceed our real need, and we have to use the foreign currency reserve in somewhere else. And I think he's talking about investing in overseas countries, which means that China has double chips. One chip is a high-speed railway as technology, also as a land power technology, and also as an investment. Many countries don't have this technology, but in future they can develop the technology. But many countries doesn't have the investment, and then China come up with both. And this is the biggest competitiveness in China. It's very similar with that in Russia. Russia now has the best competitive resource, which is about energy and petrol and gas. But Russia also has this foreign currency reserve. So how to use this energy? I think there are some many similarities. And I think Russia wants to change its geopolitical location through energy, and energy is the best tool in breaking through and finding out the seaport and outlet to the sea, but not through violent powers. Peter the Great, Ekaterina the Great, and Stalin is using violent means. But nowadays, it's more possible to use peaceful. But energy, you can say, is also a peaceful war. So this is some kind of similar strategies the two land powers of the world, Russia and China, is now using. And finally, I want to compare the two Silk Roads throughout the Eurasian continent. Generally, you can have two different Silk Roads, just like that in history. So two different Silk Roads on the land actually generate two different geopolitical locations. So different values increase in the location. So the first Silk Road is still through China to Middle East, to Central Asia, to Middle East, to Turkey, to the East Europe, to West Europe. Another one is through the Far East, and China to the Far East of Russia, and throughout Russia to Moscow, to Europe. And then these two Silk Roads are totally possible simultaneously because they have different logic. One logic is that you have to coordinate the different countries, different individual countries throughout the old Silk Road here, so including the countries in Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and so on, and to the Middle East, and to Turkey, to the East Europe, and then to West Europe. But the one in Russia, is actually one unified Silk Road. It's a Silk Road high-speed railway in a great unification, which means that the construction can be much faster and the coordination can be much simpler, but the distribution of the interest can be maybe much more disbalanced. Here, each individual country is striving for equal distribution of interest. But here, maybe most of the money goes to Moscow again, but I don't know. It's up to your central government. So there are different logic, and then there are different performances, and then different competitiveness. And finally, these two Silk Roads is actually parallel to each other, and they are actually a revival of the history. But I can imagine there is a cooperation between the two Silk Roads, simply because the map we talk about in the beginning, about this complementary structure between Russia and China. In Russia, the richer party is in the West, but the poorer party in China is also in the West. And then there's a possible collaboration in the joint, in the transitional territory, which is here, a joint between Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Russia, and China. And another one is in the Manchuria, in the Far East, and between Far East and the Northeast China. And here, Russian can have the best or most competitive economy in the future, because most of the undiscovered, unexploited energy are here, and then here are a lot of investment, a lot of cheap laborers, and then here there is a recent movement called Revival of the Northeast China, and here there is also reclamation of West China, and both projects actually the central government of China invests trillions of money over there. So China is ready. I don't know if Russia is ready here, but anyway, there are two possible joins in the future, and that might change the geopolitics of the Eurasian continent, and also the relationship between China and Russia again. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. Question? I'm sorry it's a little bit too long, but I wish we can have some questions, challenging questions, especially if I'm wrong about Russia.
If the advantages of having the sea opening changed over the years, why is it as important now as it was maybe 800 years ago or 100 years ago?
Pardon? Can you ask again?
If the advantages changed to having direct access to the sea with globalization?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't think it's changed a lot, but it must change, because the replacement of the sea power to the land power is very obvious. The sea power is a very coherent territory in which, if you are sailing a ship, you can sail it from almost very successfully from the start to the end. And there are some in the evil part. So for China, it's Malaga in Singapore. And then there are much less checkpoints of the sea power. And sea power also has the faster speed in history, has a bigger volume in history, compared to land power and land transport. But if there is a high-speed railway that has a faster speed, even faster speed, and shorter distance, and bigger volume, but I don't know if the volume is going to exceed the sea power. But you can say the frequency of the high-speed railway can be higher than the frequency of the sea power. And then the competitiveness of land power is going up. But I want to say the sea power is shrinking. I'm not going to say that, because sea power still has many competitiveness compared to land power. Yeah. And I also want to give some more concentration to what I'm talking about, because sea power, land power is very classical classification of powers. But now you have the sky powers and space powers, and also the internet power, what we call virtual power, so very different powers. And if you are checking all these powers in deploy deployment of the army, especially in the United States Army, which is the most developed in the world. You can find there are different departments of that powers.
I have this question. You spoke about the influence of the economic organization of society, the political organization of society, the culture. And China has shifted dramatically in the last 20, 30 years from one form of economic organization to another, still in the process. And the ruling party in China basically lost the ideological legitimacy to rule the country. Do you see the change of the political regime in China to a democratic form as inevitability?
Yeah, I can see that. But it must be very different from the Western model. Although the economic model has been changed domestically, but China, as I understand, is maybe the only country that can circulate inside itself in the world. Maybe it's a very ambitious assumption, but I think it's maybe the only one. And simply because China has a very complementary structure, as I said, and China has a big population. Inside itself, there is a circulation. But now the circulation is very disbalanced, and the 12th five-year plan is going to switch that disbalance. The biggest disbalance is about the exploitation-oriented economy. So most of the cheap labor from the agricultural economy was working on the global industry, global outsourcing industry. And when this globalization stopped, simply because nobody can guarantee globalization is always successful, there are always problems. That is why people prefer nowadays regionalization, because regionalization is more flexible, and then you can choose different regions to operate, and then there's diversification of the economy. But globalization is too much like killing yourself on one rope. So it's very risky, just like a central computer. So you need to diversify the different channels or different points of the economy. However, globalization is the biggest domestic demand market in the world. Although all this movement is taking place, the globalization or regionalization is still going on. So if ever there is a need for globalization, and then there is a network of a hierarchy system, of authoritarian system in China, such as CPC, one-party system, because this one party is not anymore one party, it's a one tone in the global world. Whatever it does to the people, to the society, is under the judge of the world because it's related to the globalization. And then all the different world is coming up to say, okay, this is right, this is not all right. And this model is called by myself the communism being kidnapped by globalization. But this kidnapping is very optimized. A hierarchy system inside a network, inside a network, is a very competitive system. On one side, in the domestic economy, it can make very fast, very efficient decisions without many negotiations, which is very, very low efficient. On the other side, all the decisions also under the judgment or criteria of globalization, which make this kind of hierarchy and a network balance. So the 12th five-year plan also talking about this, about the domestic democracy. But this domestic democracy, according to myself, will be a new model. This model is one party, two wings. Maybe not two parties. Maybe three parties, too much. Yeah, two parties, like republic, inside one party, two wings. And then the risk of the decision-making process can be transferred to one wing to another wing. But now it is actually the start point. And now the Communist Party of China is talking about this, talking about domestic inside-party democracy. But there is a long way to go, at least 5 to 10 years, I think.
Two questions. First of all, I've heard many explanations about why China needs to get back Taiwan, but I never heard about kind of Pacific exposure. And if you look at the map, like China's Pacific coastline looks so long and Taiwan is so small. So do you really think that China will gain something from the Pacific exposure if it gets Taiwan back? And do you think that this idea is not just your idea, but also kind of is shared by the government in general? This is the first question. The question is, you've done a lot of research on urban society in China, and you've just traveled around Russia a lot. So if I ask you to compare urban culture in Russia and in China, what would be the similarities and differences? I mean modern urban culture. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, it's not my own ideas. I myself are learning. I'm always learning from the government, Chinese government. So because I have little possibility to engage myself into the decision-making process, so I'm always trying to learn from that. And Taiwan is the only outlet. As you can see, Taiwan is part of the first island chain. There's also the second island chain, and now China's ambition is breaking through the first island chain first, and breaking through the Southeast Asia and Japan, and also Russia, of course. So Taiwan is the only outlet. And then in order to do that, there's a wisdom. It's not, of course, by violence, I guess. And this is also not new. Throughout history, 2,000 years history, China has a very long history of managing their frontiers, the margins of the civilization, and some much more big experiences than Russia. And Russia also, I think, is also learning from the history. At least Stalin is learning from the previous history of the Russian Empire. And then in Stalin time, I think it's more discreet in managing all the wars or all the conflicts in seeking of the outlet to the sea. But Brezhnev, right? Brezhnev, Khrushchev and Brezhnev are more aggressive. Khrushchev actually went to Cuba, and Brezhnev actually launched a series of wars, and actually that accelerated the collapse of the empire. So I think Stalin is kind of some of the leader who learned from history. But in China, most of the leaders learn from history a lot, and every action is taken very discreetly. And China is also known as a civilization who treat history very precisely, and we may have the biggest amount of historical books in the world, which is amazing. And until now, I'm still reading all these history books. It's totally out of my ability also. So I can give a simple case about Taiwan, about the high-speed railway according to the 5-year plan. There are a lot of high-speed railway constructed throughout the country in China, but there are only 2 high-speed railway is under subsidies. All the other is actually self-circulated in economy. One way is going to the Tibet plateau. So this is about land power. Another is going to Taiwan through the tunnel, the canal from Xiamen to Taiwan. So this is also with subsidy. And you can check out these 2 high-speed railway. It's not because of economy. And you can imagine mainland is going to pay much more to Taiwanese to make the life better over there, to finally unify Taiwan because of political ambition. It's not because of economic ambition. And then throughout all the 30 years about the communication between mainland and Taiwan, it's always about that. It's always about giving more and taking less. And giving more and taking less is the basic principle of Chinese trading system, historical trading system, which is called tribute trading system. It's very different from the colonialism trading system. So that's the first question. What's the second question? Huh? Urban culture between... Okay, I have to think about it. Actually, you were asking one question I prepared to talk about in this lecture, but I didn't have time. But maybe I can talk with you later. I have to think about it.
In your opinion, what are the greatest threats to China's development, like opening next 10 to 20 to 30 years, like political, economic? Could you just maybe give us a list, including separatism?
The greatest threat is demography. It's aging population, obviously. Yeah. China has the biggest population in the world. It's like 10 times, more than 10 times in Russia. It's over 20% of the global population. And when this percent of population is getting old, you can imagine how much burden China will have in the future. So it's going to be like 10 to 20 years is coming up. When I'm getting old, I think China is really problematic. Yeah. And then before this getting old, aging population situation coming up, China has to set up the social security system, setting up a serious problem between the urban and the rural social security system, including education and hospitality and the social housing and so on and so forth. Yeah, set up all these, and then there's also one more thing to talk about, which is about religion. And religion is actually something about what people still believe when they are totally frustrated by the reality. Yeah, religion has this function, but throughout the previous 50, 60 years, the religion in China has been more or less deconstructed, but now it's still going up. But the political system is still very sensitive about that, about this self-organization. Yeah, because of this is actually a syndrome of the communism also. This self-organization sometimes results in a very disastrous result. So I think you know Falun Gong. Falun Gong is a kind of religionist group, but finally become a threat. At least the Communist Party think it's a threat. So how to balance this kind of threats and use is also one problem. Another thing is about the cultural identity, and I think it's going on very fast now. Cultural identity, especially, for example, the Confucius and Taoism, Confucianism, Taoism, and all these Asian civilizations which make China confident and find credit inside itself, inside its history. And even in the very crisis time, there are many disciplines in all these traditional philosophies. I think that is what Communist Party is doing now through all the public media. And I personally am quite optimistic to see there are more and more media doing this kind of things. Media in China used to be thrown for propaganda, but now more and more used as a kind of public education tool. So talking about history, talking about education, talk about some useful things instead of Hollywood movies and MTV. So it's kind of different from what I see here, because at least the hotel I live every day just broadcasting all the MTVs. Of course, I'm also interested to see the debates here, the debates in the TVs, all the debates launched in TV about the community and the civil societies. It's also something going on in China now.
What was your motivation for undertaking this? What was your motivation for undertaking this study, giving this talk around the world, or is it only here?
My motivation giving a talk here, I don't know actually. One of the most important motivations is that giving a different talk. So every talk of mine should be different. So today when I'm here is in Russia, so I have to give something related to Russia. But this lecture is supposed to be 1 month later. Originally, I want to talk about the geopolitical, geographical, economical, social, political, and cultural similarities and differences between Russia and China. 1 month later. But the lecture is supposed to be today, so actually I prepared only 1 day for that. So I only add some new things, a few slides for that. But I think my motivation is actually about searching for alternative accesses to modernization in different geographical locations throughout the world. There used to be for me, a very brutal and arbitrary definition of modernization, especially ever since the colonialism to the Cold War. And there is an overwhelming of capitalism and market economy. But actually, recently, there are some other indications to show there are other alternative ways to modernity. And personally, I think there should be diversified ways to that. In China, this diversified way is actually in between the left and the right. It's in the middle. And China, Zhongguo, Zhong means in the middle, the central plan. And then in the middle, balancing all the different parts from different directions. So philosophically, Zhongyong means neutralization of different powers and finding out the variant factor, the changing factor through the environment and make the best decision. So Zhongyong is not means that I'm always stay in the middle and doing nothing. It's actually doing everything by doing nothing. It's actually by judging from the changing environmental factors to make the best decision. So I think there's not one way to modernization. Yeah. That is why I want to do this research in Russia.
Could you describe the personality of Chinese politicians now? What values, motivation, maybe describe some cultural basis of people who is now is managing the country, and can you predict how it will change in the next 10 years? Will they move towards a more European model or cultural basis, or we should come back to some maybe ancient values? Okay.
The personality of Chinese leaders.
Yes, leaders and maybe the middleware of political class.
Very good question. I'm not a friend of theirs, so I don't know them personally. And Chinese politics is always going on kind of secretly. So as far as I know, there are two sides of China politics. As I showed just now, China is now a prosperous time. And the prosperous time in Chinese history is always about flexible unification. So I used to show this on this map. And here, prosperous time. The previous time of Mao is about strong unification. So Mao is very, very strong. He's totally very intellectual, but also very strong. So he also did something wrong. But the prosperous time is that when the authority of strong unification is going away, especially when the first generation of revolution has passed away. And then who is the next authority? That's the problem. Deng Xiaoping is the revolution generation. Jiang Zemin is not. And then Jiang Zemin, the third generation of Chinese leaders, met with problems. And then Hu Jintao and Wen Jiabao, the current generation of leaders, they all met with these authority issues. Even the next selected one, Xi Jinping, he is actually the son of the previous third generation, so which we call Prince Party. And he has less and less authority because the civil society in China is going on. And this society is more and more intended to make decisions by themselves. So this is also a potential, but also a problem. There is also always a relation between the state and society, in which the society should coordinate with the decision of the state, and then the whole body can move on. So as far as I know, the collaboration between who and when is something between strong and soft, hard and soft. Who is more hard, and when is more softer, harder and softer. So when is more like very much like a mother, and who is very much like a father. But the coming generation, I think the generation is always giving new authorities. The new authorities by different political actions, giving more benefit and profit to the society and make some national achievement, and that Chinese can find more cultural identities. I think that's every big country, the leader of big country should do. But you are right that the one-party system is very hard to find a sustainable authority, and that is why I just talk about the two wings of one party. One-party system should can maintain this authority when the economy is still going like this. But when the economy is going down, that's the problematic thing. So everything we're talking about now is actually about how to coordinate the social political stability with the economical uprise. And everything is actually about opportunity in China. And catching up opportunity, make the shift in the social political system. And finally, we can access peacefully into the crisis in the future. So that's the, I think that's the way how the future leaders in China work. So that's all. About urban culture. Okay. So urban culture, I think there are a big difference. Demography is one difference. Demography in China 10 times more than Russia, which means that China has many more big cities than Russia, which means that China has maybe more diversified urban cultures in Russia. At least I can find out over 7 to 9 different regional zones in China now. Yeah, some bigger, some smaller, and all these zones have very different local identities, and all these identities going to be proven, or maybe sometimes more or less weakened by the organization. Simply because one thing, you cannot make all the rural population to one city, to Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, to Shenzhen, not to 4 cities. In the future, maybe to 9 cities or even to 20 cities. And then different metropolitan cities and different big scale, medium scale, and small cities. And then at least the metropolitan cities and the big cities has the possibility to generate its own urban culture. And in China, it will be very diversified. However, of course, there is also a link between all this urban culture. Link is actually about how the central government is broadcasting the collectivism in China in history, and this collectivism gives the room to the local diversities. And this collectivism includes all the previous thing I'm talking about, includes Confucianism, especially. Even includes the communism. Something communism is really good. And Medvedev recently also talked about that, about the goodness of the communism Soviet Union, in which collectivism is one thing that is supposed to be good. And then, for example, in Chongqing recently, there is a leader, Guo Xilai. He is encouraging local people to sing the red songs. And red songs is one way to encourage this collectivism, in which in the market economy has been kind of split. And another thing is actually about in the red years in Mao, the social disparity is not so extreme. So by singing red song, this weakened society can gain their identity. And then this is also a gesture to show more social security, social welfare can be given to the local people. So this is only one single case. Communism can be part of the collectivism, and then there's a fusion between an historical old collectivism and militarism, but give rooms to all the different ideologies. So to Hong Kong is about the Cantonese culture, and to Shanghai is about the Wu culture, and to Xinjiang is about the Muslim culture. So all these actually are possible. Different things come up together in the fusion. So I think that is kind of different. And personally, I think there should be a balance between all these universal values and the consumerism. Consumerism, there are goodness also inside, but there should be a balance against this consumerism. So I think this can be a compare between China's urban culture to Russia's urban culture. But I will devote more time to that, answering that, okay? Okay, thank you very much.